Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to Sera Timms from the Black Mare, Eyes of Gemini, I should say. Sorry, it's Sunday. And Black Math Horseman. So yeah, I've been following Sera for quite a long time, so I'm looking forward to having a chat with her today. I'm just bringing. Thanks, Laura. Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, you look gorgeous.
Yeah, so do you.
Oh, it's a Sunday here. I'm just a bit.
It's
What's that?
it's so nice to interact with you like with voices instead of just
I know, instead of just words and faces.
visually.
Oh, it's so good. How are you?
I'm good. It's wild here. I mean, it's 4th of July and
Oh, yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
I live in Highland Park and like 4th of
Yes.
July starts in like April in Highland
Hmm.
Park and
Yeah.
goes on and gets louder and louder until July 4th. And so now is probably the loudest possible moment.
Is everyone doing stupid fireworks and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, exactly. But I can
Yeah, I can slightly hear them, I think. Yeah.
party. Everyone's gone pretty wild. And
Yeah, they're doing it for your live stream.
oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I to hear you. But obviously, with this whole quarantine thing, people are extra wild.
Oh, I know. Everyone's kind of going a little nutty.
Yeah, how is it in Australia?
It's actually we've gotten rid of majority of it. So a lot of the other states are coming out of lockdown and doing really well. My state not so much. Our state is like the music arts kind of like hub.
Okay.
And yeah, when they started to lease ease things a little bit,
Yeah.
everyone went crazy and was like, "Ooh, beer! Ooh, shows! Ooh, yeah!" And so now we're back in like quarantine. Now we have some really crazy, um, like certain suburbs are in complete lockdown. Like you're not allowed to leave. Like so, for example, like you wouldn't be able to leave Highland Park.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You leave your
So,
area?
pardon?
Uh-oh. I have a little
You
breaking
had
up.
a little buffer. You're right. Hang on, just a little buff. Oh wow, it's the same in San Francisco. Crazy. Sorry guys, just a little tech hitch. Hopefully she'll be back in a minute. If not, she'll jump out and come back. Yeah, she'll be back in a second. And if anyone has any questions for Sarah, please, yeah, do just add them down the bottom, and I'll be able to ask them as well. Hey, so it's a bit hectic. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, certain suburbs are now in complete lockdown.
Wow.
Yeah, so my suburb's still okay, but I'm kind of like in the middle of like all of the ones that are started. So yeah, it's a bit crazy. It'd be kind of like being in Highland Park and having like Echo Park and like everywhere around you.
Lockdown.
Like, yeah.
That would be weird.
So
Be like
yeah,
that. Be like a free person surrounded by prisoners.
yeah,
It makes
basically.
you really grateful. You're like, I can
Yeah.
store.
Because you kind of can't leave, like, so everything has to be in that actual suburb. So, yeah, if you go out of it and, like, if you get pulled up or anything and they ask why, what are you doing outside of your suburb?
Yeah.
You can get fined and stuff now, really huge fines. So, yeah, it's a
Much as
bit nuts.
I don't like any restrictions on freedom, I want like my inner optimist wants to be like, maybe people will develop more of a communal spirit.
Yeah,
They're forced to like stay because we like it's so weird now that a lot of us don't even know our neighbors because we're so isolated in our little like subcultural communities on our phones all the time.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're kind of being forced, yeah, to interact and to, we'll get to know everybody. I mean, and the people closest to us, I guess. And
Yeah.
also, you know, like see who you trust. Like, I had a funny conversation with King Dude about um the whole mask thing and how, you know, like here in Australia, well, in Melbourne at the moment, you're allowed to have 5 visitors to your house.
5 visitors.
Yeah, that
I don't,
don't like friends or whatever.
okay.
And we were kind of saying like now you see who your real friends are, because it's like you invite them over, if you give them a hug, they're like, I'm willing to die for you. You know what I mean? Like, and if you, and if they're not in that like group of 5 people, you know, they're like, you're like, sorry,
You're like,
my
past the hug.
no. Yeah.
We gotta move on.
Yeah, you gotta wear a mask. I'm sorry, you can't come in. Yeah, and we were just having a big laugh about how now you're really seeing like people, like, you know, who's your tightest like people, because you're like, yeah, you're
Well,
my, people are talking about like, you know, safe lists. So it's like, you know, you've got a few girlfriends or whatever.
and you also find out a lot of people's views as far as like where people are like forced to take sides and they really like
Mm,
one bandwagon or another, or if they don't want to bandwagon at all. And you kind of start to see things about people you never saw before in times of duress like this. Everything gets out.
yeah, yeah. Like I've been surprised, I think, by some people's reaction to the whole mask thing. Like I really was shocked by some people that, like, you know, friends of friends or whatever, or just in our musical community here, and I've been shocked by their like, you know, this is a restriction on our freedom, and you know, and I'm like, isn't like human life more important than social life? You
Yeah,
know, it's really interesting seeing people like so many conflicting views.
true. I think I strive to see all sides for sure.
Mm.
And I can see all sides. Like I can see all sides. Like, no, we need to be cautious. We need to make sure, especially like our elderly are protected, you know, because
Yeah, yeah.
who are mostly in danger. But then also I see the people who are like, you know, our freedom is being restricted and there's no end to this.
Yeah.
Looking at history and the sort of influenza and other disease related outbreaks we've had and how we've dealt with that in comparison to now, a lot different, you know, there's a lot
Yeah.
of restrictions being put and not allowing people to be responsible for themselves or like to take that leadership, you know.
Yeah.
So I totally see both sides. Like ideally people though at their highest state would be able to come together and deal with it without these like legal overarching laws on it.
Things. Yeah.
I'm an idealist, so
You know, I normally am very like, you know, open and very against that kind of thing. But when it comes to health, you know, like I am like I have immunocompromised systems and stuff. So for me, it's like become a real like shock and kind of a wake up call for me, because it's like I have to stay in quarantine pretty
right,
much.
right.
So for me, it's like I don't have the like not the privilege, but like I don't have the, you know, I can't go out and just like go to a club or,
Oh,
you know,
there's
go and have a meal, or like, you know, or complain about masks or social distancing, because if
totally
one little thing can't, you know, I'll end up in hospital for a month or 2 months
right.
if I catch it. So it's like for me, it's really like it's not so much about the restriction, but about survival, I guess, you
Yep.
know. And I think Australia's been a little bit better than, like, say, America. I think America, it is very much a power control um, restriction issue, and you've got all these bigger issues going on,
All
and
what?
it's you, you've got all the bigger issues, you know, with all the cops and the Black Lives Matter, and you've got all that massively happening, and I think it's all feeding into like one and Trump, and you know,
yeah, it's a disaster over here.
yeah, and we don't have like that to that extreme. So I think like, you know, our country as a whole hasn't reacted like so much so as we're being impinged upon. It's more about like, why are people not doing the right thing? Whereas, you know, that seems to be the bigger conversation here, is like, why aren't we sticking together? Why aren't we just doing what we're meant to do? But I can totally see it again, like I said, from your country's side, because I can see you've got so much fuel to the fire at the moment that it's not just about, you know, if it was just COVID on its own, maybe it'd be a different story, but you've got so many things flying around at the moment.
Yeah,
and it's very heated.
super heated. Super
Yeah. Yeah, like it's like you just see, I'm like, you know, and you see things on Twitter and whatnot, and I'll be like, oh my God, like I have no right to speak on it because I'm not from your country. So I'm not gonna, you know, be like get involved in things that I have no understanding or authority about. Like you know, but it is scary to watch. Like,
I mean, I really think what it comes down to, though, is that everybody needs to have a tolerance for everybody else's opinion and everybody's way of doing things. And, you know, we're so polarized here. Well, the Western world is pretty polarized. The whole world is pretty polarized. But
yeah.
I think the U.S., being such a young nation, is experiencing probably the most polarization, you know, at this time. And everybody just wants to have their opinion be right and be accepted by everybody. But a mature society, a evolved society, learns to understand that we have differing opinions about things. And I accept your opinion. I don't agree with it, but I'm going to go over here and do my own thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so we all just need to focus, I think, more on like coming back to basics, coming back to our community, our friends. Who can we take care of? Not who can we attack? Who can we but who can we care for? Who can we protect? That's more of the spirit that would be helping mend the great divide that America is suffering through right now.
Yeah, yeah. You're making me feel so incredibly zen right now with the background, and I can see the because that's what I'm normally like in the nighttime. But I've got all my thing diffusers and like everything going at the moment. But at nighttime, I'm all diffusers and candles. And now you're bringing me back. I'm like, oh,
I mean, like,
it's very soothing.
Because everyone needs to be soothed, don't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. Yeah. The amount of candles and things I go through weekly is insanity.
Like I felt about 3 years ago when I became single again after like 9 years of being in a relationship. I grew up, I'm a twin. And so.
Oh, wow. Identical or fraternal?
What?
Identical or fraternal?
Yeah.
Fraternal.
Yeah. And so when you grow up a twin, like you're never alone. You're not even alone in the womb. Like you don't even know what it means to be alone.
Yeah.
And so I never had gotten comfortable being alone. And then when my last relationship ended, I found myself getting kind of lonely. And I was like, I want to not feel lonely anymore. And I discovered, in addition to like spiritual work and all of that, one trick to not be alone anymore was to light candles. And once I lit candles, I didn't feel alone anymore. It's almost, I just feel like, because you have like a moving, like living presence you can see.
Yeah.
And like fire has, you know, the elements all have a life of their own, you know, earth, air, water, fire. But like the fire is the one that actually moves. So it feels like you're living presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's always like if I ever fall back on like feeling like I feel a little bit alone or like off, just light a candle.
Candle. I'm like light a bazillion candles.
Make the room a temple, a gothic every night.
Yeah, I've got like you know, I've got like huge candelabra and like all these like I've got like an electronic diffuser and an oil diffuser, and I have like crystals everywhere, and like
Absolutely.
yeah, that kind of thing. And people are always like come in and they're like, it's very witchy in here. And it's just sort of goes everywhere in the house. And like
You're like,
yeah,
at
I
all? It's,
pardon?
you're like, do you know me at all? Is it, are you?
Yeah. Oh no, my friends know, but when like other people come in, they're like, what's going on? Like a, a housemate who's just sort of leaving actually. Um he hates when I like sage. And
Oh,
so, and I'm just like everywhere. Like I've got one of those like old school like Turkish urns where you can also do like you can do the crystallized stuff, and you can also do actual burning sage, and then it closes down and it emanates out. But I also do like like more. But yeah, we'll be saging the crap out of his room um in a couple of days.
like, doing new
Yeah.
past the
Yeah,
same.
just yeah, get rid of I do think there's a thing with energy. Like I really do believe that there is bad energy and good energy, and you can just feel it
Yeah.
like around you and in the air and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I like to surround myself with nice smells and like nice like candles, and I love like preserved flowers, and like and I buy fresh flowers as well, but I also um get them and then like let them die and preserve them as well, like so they're kind of everywhere.
Well, I mean, if you look into like the scientific backgrounds of those things, like herbs, like smells, sounds, anything, they actually all change our brain waves, the frequency of our brain waves. And
Mm.
so they are absolutely affecting the vibration on even a scientific level.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just I think whatever works for you. I know some people think it's a bit, and
Right.
that's fine, like if it's not your thing, it's not your thing, but if as long as it's not hurting anybody else and you're getting something out of it, then that's fine.
Totally.
Um, yeah. But I'm so glad to finally, yeah, have you on. It's so great. Because I was saying earlier, like we've talked
Yeah.
over the years for a long time, and I've followed your whole career throughout, um, the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's like super exciting, just A, to see what you're doing now and catch up, and just to talk to you in person in anyway, because God knows when I'll be coming back to your way again for a while until we know when everything's back to normal travel wise.
Yeah.
But I think we were a lot of people like really have brought up, like when I mentioned you were coming on,
Yeah.
how much they really liked either Eyes of Gemini or Black Mare, and they'd seen one or missed the other, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think I've always loved about not only your work in Eyes of Gemini, but also your solo stuff in Black Mare,
Yeah.
is that there's always that very like heavy undertone, but always this really ethereal kind of like feeling that goes with it. And I think you have such a unique voice that works well um, with heavy music, but it also works well without. Like I think but it's that combination of your voice and the music together that I think a lot of people are most attracted to. Like, and you've got that spiritual undertone, I think, as well, which draws a lot of people in, I think,
Yeah.
because there's an authenticity there, and you get this real connecting feeling, and also that you are who you say you are, and what you're doing is completely authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's one of the things that I first like thought about you. And then of course after speaking with you, it was beyond clear that that's exactly the truth, you know, that you really are this, you know, it's not this persona that, you know, I know that there's a lot of bands around who kind of use, you know, this kind of spiritual and ethereal and occult and, you know, witchy vibes and all that kind of stuff. But it's more an aesthetic
Right.
draw card rather than something that's actually within the person. I think with you, I feel like that's something you really believe in, and it's something that transcends the music, and you know makes people, you know, connect in that way because they know it's not just a fad or a, you know, it's sort of this bag of tricks that you're presenting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think I agree with everything you said. But also at the same time, I do think that, you know, before I started playing music pretty late in my life, we'll get into that, but I certainly did have a very aesthetically shallow stage.
I
Um,
think, well, we all start somewhere, don't we?
yeah, and I do think that like all of those, you know, people that use the occult imagery and stuff like that, that are not really truly spiritually embracing it, I think they all could do the same thing, but they're just like at a different stage. You know, they're like a way, and they don't want to go in because to go in is not fun at all. To go into the occult is the hidden, which means that you have to go through all of your shadow work, and you have to go through, you know, the dark night of the soul and address all of the really ugly things about you and your life and your history and your family and everything.
Yeah.
So that's always been the sort of the guiding force for me, is that I wanted to be, the only thing I ever wanted to be as a child was wise. That was like the first thing I always knew for sure that I wanted to be, was wise. And
That's a really unique thing as a child to want to be.
yeah, I suppose so. Uh,
Yeah, like most people be like, oh, I want to be this, that, you know. I mean,
also
but
had,
to
oh, I did also have like, I want to be an actress. Like, I want to be
yeah.
this. I know that too.
Oh, of course. But to be conscious of something like I want to be wise,
Yeah.
that's pretty, you know.
It was a, I don't know, it was a very young age. I wanted to be wise. I wanted to connect to something more than mundane world. You know, I grew up going to a Lutheran church with my mom, and I always was questioning from the moment that I can remember, like, who are these people singing to? Like, who are they praying to? Why
Hmm.
isn't this God that they're praying to talking to me? You know? And so I always just had questions, and
Hmm.
couldn't understand why it was that I was feeling such a state of limitation and disconnection from the divine world.
Yeah.
Uh, so to me, the quest became, um, to become wise is to know divinity. That was the whole overarching goal that I had for a long time.
Mhm.
So it's kind of that's why the spiritual aspect is in there. Um, and I did grow up around musicians, and my father is a
Mhm.
stunning, amazing musician as well. And so I do think it's in my blood, but
Yeah.
I never planned on being a musician at all. I just kind of like, I had a guitar growing up that I would like pick up and try and play a few chords, and I'm real ADD, so I would be like, I don't know if I can finish a song, like you know. And I had a lot of fear regarding expectations, because my dad is such a phenomenal, and I didn't grow up with him in my life,
Hmm.
so I felt like a lot of insecurity, like I could never be as good as my dad, you know.
Yeah.
And so I didn't start actually really playing music until my boyfriend at the time, going back into like 2001, um, the origin of Black Bat Horseman was,
Hmm.
my boyfriend Ian at the time had started a band with our roommate, and they were a guitar drum duo,
Mm-hmm.
and they were harsh. And I had heard them playing in the garage all the time while I was like clumsily strumming my acoustic guitar and going to school for art. And they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna do some gigs, like just like a duo." And I was like, just like, why don't you guys just let me try and play bass?
Yeah.
I think I can probably play bass. And then I was like, why don't you guys just let me sing too? You know? And that's really what started my whole path as a musician.
Yeah. So had you sung before, or were you just like, I'm
No,
going to sing?
no, no. I had like stopped singing as many children do. You know, once you
Mm-hmm.
get indoctrinated into
Yeah.
not a singer, most people stop singing, which I think is so sad
Yeah.
because, you know, in all ancient and indigenous cultures, everybody sings. It's part of life. It's part of ritual. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I had stopped singing, and then I had developed a lot of like fear and tension and resistance around singing. I actually had to take some singing lessons because when I started singing again for that band, I had like such tightness in my jaw
Mm-hmm.
because there was just like this inner resistance. And
Yeah.
it was a lot of it was related to fear, but also it was related to my grandparents teaching me to suck my stomach in all the time
Yeah.
and have air, and so you're trying
Yeah.
to everything not from your stomach but from your head.
Yeah.
And that actually goes like on a macrocosmic level. If you look at society and people today, we try and control everything from our minds and not from our gut.
Yeah.
Everything is backwards.
Yeah. 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 100%. I mean, I think, you're right about the growing up and it's like singing's not it's not a thing. I
Yeah,
remember when I was young, I sang all the time. I
yeah,
remember my dad used to always bust in on me,
yeah,
and I'd be, I was a hairbrush singer, a bottle singer, whatever thing that was like a mic I had, would grab, and I'd be just going off to whatever it was. And
yeah.
and my dad used to have a funny thing like about it. He used to be like, "Oh, Renee's jamming away again," or whatever. And but he treated it as a joke. He never sort of said it was stupid, but
Right.
there is, when you're growing up, especially I think as a female, you kind of, there's this like, oh, you can't do that for real. Like, no one can, not everyone can be a rock star, or, so people get kind of talked down, or they give up because they just don't, have that, support system, I guess, of people saying, you should do this, why not, um, and embrace that. One of my good friends who's sang metal music, and who's sung folk music and different types of music. He said to me once, anybody can sing.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's a lie that people tell themselves and tell other people that, only, I mean, of course there's phenomenal singers, but in terms of singing, you can sing, you
I
can
mean,
start a punk band and you can sing. You can do, there's
the
different singing.
there were two key people that taught me that I could sing, which was PJ Harvey and Ian Cole.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I didn't hear them until, I was totally out of high school, and I had kind of like been on my course. I was like, I'm in college. I'm going to do like, whatever. Who knows? I went through 1,000 things I wanted to be. I had kind of like always wanted to sing, but I was like, I'm
Yeah.
singer, and I had good friends in high school who were like singers, they would sing,
Mhm.
the school,
And they give the hand up, and
yeah, like I can't do that,
yeah, yeah.
roommate named Julie who introduced me to so much underground music when I was 21, and PJ Harvey was like key for me.
Yeah, and she can sing in so many different ways.
He really
And
can.
her earlier stuff, which is, the real rocky stuff,
Yeah,
it's like, it's so raw, and it's just coming from in here, she's just it's boiling up and coming out, you know. I think she's become a well-seasoned singer now, I think. But, you know, but she was, when she started, it was like, I'm just gonna sing. And Ian Curtis, I love, and it's a perfect example of someone who never sang and just went, oh, I'll be the singer, and he pulled it off. And you know, and he has a distinct style that's almost talk singing, I guess.
Yes.
And that's testament that, yeah, anybody can sing. You just got to find your way.
Or your niche. It's the thing where, you know, I think every artist to some degree, every artist has a weakness. Every person has a weakness. And our weaknesses always become our greatest strengths because it forces us to like open up a new portal of creativity that nobody else has done because they haven't had that exact specific weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, yeah, it's amazing that you never, yeah, I love that you started so late in life because, you know, like there's you often don't, people don't talk about that, you know, often it's like, oh, I've been doing it since I was a little kid and or they started off really young. And I think that's really cool that, you know, you were like, I'm going to pick this up and just do it.
I'm totally a late bloomer in everything. I'm always late. I'm always the last to all of that stuff. But I also do think that like part of, you know, everybody has a lot of purposes, but I also think a big part of my purpose is removing the stigma that as you get older, your creative life is coming to an end or your opportunity to begin again is coming to an end, or you're running out of creative flow, because creative flow has nothing to do, or creative innovation, it has nothing to do with your age. It does have to do with your energy and with connection to the muse energy. And a lot of people, when they get older, they get comfortable, and that's what removes that that flow. So I think that I purposefully have never allowed myself to get too comfortable, because the flow, the creative flow, is what really makes me feel alive.
Yeah. And I think as you get, it's so underrated getting old. Like when you're young, you're like, I don't want to be old. And as you get older, you realize, like with every year and then with every couple of years, you know, you learn and evolve so much and you have so much more to say that's important, and you actually go through things where, you know, I think that it makes the music almost more meaningful because you've actually transcended so many things within your life, so you have a lot to say, you know.
Yeah, I like to look at, like, I tend to be drawn to like classical hierarchical structures, whether I like them or not, but I like to look at, you know, monarchies and identities that go with monarchies, and I'm a tarot card reader too, so obviously I'm looking at the pages and the princes and the queens and the kings, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that the general popular output we have of music or celebrity in general, it's mostly coming from, as far as females go, it's coming from princesses. Very young princesses that are being groomed, you know?
Yeah.
They're not actually people of power. They're people who are mouthpieces for the empire.
Yeah.
You know, not exclusively, but when you are young and you're embracing that princess archetype, you haven't really figured out who you are yet. It takes time, it takes experience, it just takes age. To get to that place of sovereignty, which is the identity of a queen or an empress, for instance.
Yeah.
And I think that largely our society is lacking that, as far as strong older women in media, you know.
Yeah.
I don't keep up that much with media, but like I think Helen Mirren, for instance, is like an amazing example.
She's phenomenal. Yeah, she is. She's phenomenal. And I've always been like a Jessica Lange.
Jessica Lange. It's so good.
She's just phenomenal. And then of course Tilda Swinton, who just gets better with age.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and and then musically, I love her vocally and musically.
Yeah.
She's gotten better with age, and that's Marianne Faithfull. Like
Oh,
her
yeah.
pain and her just everything that comes out of her has been better and better as she's aged.
Yes.
I
Absolutely.
think 40 plus is her best music.
Yeah. And I hope to see a lot more of that because that's one of those things too. When I was a child, and I was always wanted to be wise. I maybe I was arrogant as a child, but I didn't think the grandparents around me had wisdom.
Yeah,
I was, I noticed how, families just throw their elderly into old folks' homes and stuff like that, which always seemed. And I was like, well, why does that happen? And I was like, well, because they don't have wisdom, like they don't have anything to offer.
mm,
They're just like mouths to feed because they haven't obtained wisdom.
yeah,
And so I noticed that our society in general was lacking this sort of elderly. I don't like that word, but like maybe more like crown wisdom.
yeah,
Um, what's the equivalent of crown in a man?
yeah.
What is that? I don't actually.
What's that? Sorry.
The equivalent of a crone for a man? What would that be?
I actually don't know. Crone. That's interesting. Yeah, I actually don't know what it would be for a man. What's
Yeah,
that? Yeah, there's not like a. It's kind of like yeah, like a wise man, I guess. But there's not a specific word. Well, there probably is, but
a wizard.
I'm at a blank. Wizard, yeah. That's all I can. That's all that's coming to me at the moment is like a wizard type. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um.
Uh,
Yeah, I guess wizard is all I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there's a proper word that I can look for later. We will look for it later. But yeah, there's or a whole, there was always like a wizardy, like a holy man or a wise man.
yeah,
They would just refer to them as, I guess, in
yeah,
like indigenous culture at least.
yeah.
It's they call their wise man or their holy man. Um, yeah, and I think also there's our culture, especially Western culture, um, just have views um, old, aging and old age very differently. Sorry, we just got a bit of a buffer. Um, a bit of a buffer happening. She'll be back in a minute. I blame 4th of July and crazy, crazy fireworks. Here she is back again. Oh, there you're back. I'm like, it's just crazy, crazy, probably LA with all these fireworks and whatnot and everyone online and
It is, and it's retrograde too. So
yeah, all
yeah,
this crazy things going on. But I was just saying, yeah, like with Western culture, there's very sorry, I'm just gonna put some heat on. You're beautifully like nice and warm, like hot there and it's cold here. But
oh,
I have when we put our central heating on it becomes a sauna. So I haven't got it on, but now it's a little bit chilly in here. Yeah, I think Western culture also particularly views aging and the elderly very different. um, we don't have that, like you said, the view of that they're worth something. It's like once you hit that age, you're just a burden,
yeah,
and I just I don't want to look after you and
yeah,
deal. I've got my own stuff to deal with, and that's where you see that mass, like putting your parents and grandparents in homes and things like that. Um, my one of my grandparents was in a home and I visited him all the time, but he was there because he needed extra medical help that wasn't available. And but it's horrible to see. Like, and I would go and visit him, and I remember spending a Christmas there, and we were like the only. It was me and my younger sister, and we were the only ones there.
Yeah.
Like, there was pretty much no one had any visitors. And I was like, this is it's Christmas, and it would take 1 hour out of your day to come and see that family member. You know, and it was just like singing carols and you know, just hanging out with them for an hour or two. And yeah, my father couldn't go, so both me and my sister went. And it was actually really shocking and quite sad to see um, that most of the residents had nobody there visiting, and all the nurses and things came up to both me and my sister and were like, "Thank you so much for coming." We never have any young people, especially visit, because at the time I would have been, I think mid-20s, and my sister was like 4 years younger than me. So I think we were like the youngest people that visit. And most of the others are like, you know, their daughter or son, you know, might visit. But yeah, they actually came up and thanked us for coming, and because we were, you know, singing along and chatting with the other members, like that had no one and stuff like that. Because you really feel it when you're there, like, and it must and it must be a horrible feeling like, you know, being abandoned, I guess, you know.
I can't imagine feeling like valued too.
Yeah, you just got, it's just like, yeah, there's nothing of value here. So, you know, and you can barely get a family member to visit you, you know, even on a holiday. Like, it's craziness. But that doesn't happen in indigenous cultures, and it doesn't happen in a lot of Eastern cultures and European cultures. It seems to be just Western cultures that have this view of, you know, if there's no value to you, then we'll just put you elsewhere. And, you know, and I remember my dad saying to me, I don't want to go in a home, and if I get sick, I want you to like pull the switch on me. And I was like, pardon? And he's like, just pull it. He goes, I would rather go and be like at peace. I don't want to drag on. He's like, I don't want to drag on and be wearing nappies and just be like this thing. And I was like, at first I was very shocked, but then I understood where it was also coming from. That he, you know, because I guess he understands that this is what happens in Western culture. And he's like, I don't want to be a burden to anyone, and I don't want anyone to feel like they're going to, you know, I'm a financial thing to them. And, you know, and that kind of thing. So I think it is a strange, really strange thing, that the devaluing of, you know, the elderly, and that there's nothing they can teach us.
Right.
You know, and I think as the generations move along, you know, we're losing that wisdom and that, you know, that knowledge of all the past. You know, as each generation dies, you know, you know, there's less and less history being retold. You know,
That's true. And I think that, you know, a lot of that devaluing of the elderly from capitalism and monetizing human life for sure.
Yeah.
As far as money goes, they're not doing any they're not bringing any in. They're just costing money when we get down.
Yeah.
And then the second one is a very information based society, which is what now it's very mind based, very rational, and we have a lot of innovations and technology that have come from that have been really amazing, but we do lack a lot of hearts, you know, touch with their hearts. And when you're in touch with your heart, you know, you can visit somebody that is in an old folks home, and they maybe don't even have their memory intact. Maybe they don't know who you are, but that vibration of your heart is still there. You can still feel that love and that being which is inside the sort of, you know, tangled mask of the elderly body that's not functioning.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about with energy.
Yes.
And you know, and it becomes, when you go to somewhere like that, and you bring some positive energy, it's
Yeah.
amazing what it can do for those people. Just half an hour of your time,
Yeah.
and seeing just that, almost like a reignition in
Yeah.
that person, even if they don't, even if they have no memory, you know, they've lost their memory and they have zero idea who you are. Like,
Right.
it's interaction, which I think comes down to one of the most primal and basic needs humans, you know, want: interaction and love and connection.
Because at that point, you know, they're going back to the beginning of the serpent eating its tail. They're turning into babies again,
Hmm.
essentially, you know. And I think in that way, it's so interesting. We provide babies with so much love, even though they can't really talk to us or provide, but they have so much potential to grow. And elderly people, they have potential to grow too, but it's like leaving out of their body. Their growth is going outside of our realm of understanding.
Yeah.
But I think that ultimately, we can look at it also in terms of consciousness, because
Mm.
everything on the outside world is a reflection of the inner conscious self. And so the way that our society teaches us to treat people who are not useful is the way that we look at parts of ourselves that are not useful. And
Mm.
then if we're not having compassion for an elderly person in our life or a grandparent or something, we think they're not useful, they can't tell me anything, they can't help me. That means the parts of us that are useful, which we all have, we're not having compassion for those parts, you know? We're not having compassion for just being, you know,
Mm.
just and not even doing anything, just sitting there breathing, which is beautiful and miraculous in itself, just being able to exist in our, you know, crystalline cellular structure in its simplicity and all of its brilliance. So I think that I hope that that will shift over time, and who knows, maybe that's something, maybe that will be an unintended effect of, you know, quarantine, like having to actually sit there and look at who's around you and just like, the good thing I've seen about quarantine is that you just sit still. Just
Yeah.
sit still. You can't be just
Yeah.
doing things all the time, you know, which is fun, but it can be like a hamster on the wheel too.
Yeah. I think I think the beginning, I think maybe, like, you know, when it first started back in March, a lot of people were like very frustrated and not knowing what to, not not used to sitting still and just listening and being, and struggled um a lot. And then, you know, and then there was the, you know, the hamster and the wheel. And I feel like now I've come to a place where I feel like I'm becoming much more creative, and I'm much more, like, you know, okay with just sitting and being,
Yeah.
you know. And I think it will be, at some point, people will see it. You know, it's changed a lot of people's lives, you know,
Right.
and the way that they live. That it, you know, it will be a sort of a transcending moment for some people, particularly people who, you know, work all the time, and now doing nothing and having to listen to themselves, or even if they've lost their job, and thinking, I know a lot of friends who've lost jobs, and um, everybody now is sitting still and looking within themselves and think, you know, sort of, what do I really want
Yeah.
now? You know, do I want to go back to that life? Or, you know, do I want to go to school? Do I want to go be more creative? Do I want to change industries? And you know, it's kind of, so I think there's a lot of positives that are going to have come out of it and will come out of it. But, you know, at the moment, it's probably hard for a lot of people to see that at the moment. But yeah, I've seen it just within myself, that, you know, being able to go through that like kind of you know, dealing, having to listen to yourself, and dealing with, you know, your own emotions, and you're actually stuck with your thoughts and you need to address them now.
Yep.
Because otherwise you're just going to be consumed by them because there's nothing else to sort of to do or distract you, you know. So it's a good time for a lot of people to work on themselves, and it's been, from a lot of the musicians that I've spoken to, a really great time for them to center themselves and also harness creativity and create more, because they're not on tour and they're not moving and like, you know, kind of stuck in this thing of like, yes, make a EP, make a record, tour, make a record, tour, like, and you know, like now they've got that freedom,
Right. It's true.
you know. And I think, like I was going to say, where with your lyrics particularly, where do you draw, you know, your inspiration for, no matter what band you're writing for? I mean, whether you write different things for different bands, I'm not, you know, that's and what you write about, is that something like, do you have a different voice for each band, or is it fairly consistent? And how do you?
I do have a different voice for each band.
Mhm.
And it's basically, I feel like it's just like being a radio receptor, you know, transmitter. And I just tune the dials. They automatically get tuned differently for each band.
Yeah.
And uh, and really, what I do with my process is that I always start by singing lyrics that aren't words. Um, and then I'll go through and I'll kind of like write down the syllables. And I'll figure out like how many syllables this
Mm-hmm.
is. And then as I'm kind of like going with the syllables, I just sit there and I listen to the music and I just wait. I literally just, most of it is waiting for words to fill
To
out.
come to you. So generally, the music's written first.
Music is almost always written first. A lot of times I always have lyrical ideas, you know, that'll come
Mm-hmm.
up like driving in the car and going on a hike or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always write down those ideas about what a song will be. But then when I go and put it to music, I always adjust it. I need to be able to like say the syllables the way that they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And so I always end up completely kind of keeping the original idea of the lyrics I may have just jotted down, maybe just using probably a few phrases here and there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
usually, sometimes keeping the same idea, but sometimes it evolves into something totally different.
Yeah. There's like that editing process.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ultimately, though, it does feel like something. If I've ever tried to like have control over it, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I can read it. I know because I'll read it over, and I was like, "That's so like your human mind wrote that. Like like your little human menial mind wrote that." And when it's coming from like a muse source, which I feel the well that you know all real artists pull from.
Yeah.
Um, I, I always read it, like reread it after I've written down. I'm like, and it never feel like I never ever never
Yeah.
anything that I actually put out into the world feel like I wrote it.
Yeah.
It always feels like a gift to me, and it always feels like it's teaching me. And a lot of times I won't actually know what it's about when I write it. And oftentimes it will follow like a repeating, echoing theme in my life for years. And certain songs will reveal that they mean different things at different times,
Yeah.
which is fun, but also a little scary because I've realized that in lyric writing, and I think a lot of artists have this, is that you can write prophetic things, or you can write your reality into existence. You know,
Yeah.
with the Black Math Horseman album, for instance, like the last song I wrote was like apocalypse, like end this empire with like hail and fire, you know?
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, what happened is like the band ended up breaking up. We hadn't broken up yet, but when we were still like on the rocks,
Yeah.
there was literally a fire on our floor of our rehearsal space, and then
Wow.
the fire truck came and they flooded the whole floor because
Yeah.
we put it out, and it was like apocalyptic scenario. And okay, totally wrote those words. Oh, gotta be careful.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I don't think it always, for me, in order to be good, it has to be intuitive, and it almost has to not make sense to me.
Yeah. So just like something that just comes out, I guess. Yeah.
Just wait for the flow, for the pure flow to come from the river, and then I capture it. Um,
Yeah.
and for the different, there's different voices though, like Black Mare very much. Black Mare started out, the muse for that originally was Freya,
Yeah.
mother goddess.
Hmm.
Also, she's evolved into Venus, and so that was like goddess of love. But Freya was one of her original incarnations when she was the goddess of war and love.
Hmm.
And she got really polarized by the Romans and the Greeks into the idealized goddess of love. So,
I love that you use all the Greek mythology because I was obsessed. I still am obsessed. I was obsessed as a child with Greek mythology, and I used
yeah.
to study it like constantly all the time. And I was always obsessed with Medusa
Oh,
because,
oh my God, deeply.
yeah, I was always obsessed with her, and I still to this day love watching and rewatch the original Clash of the Titans
We
all the time.
had the lunchbox. Like
Yeah,
was deep. Like that was it.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
always like, this woman, this powerful woman, and she's been demonized and trapped into this other body and made this monster for something that was so, it was just yeah, she's just such an amazing figure because when you think about who she was and how she became Medusa,
Yeah.
um, it's such a really pivotal, strong story. And then, you
Right.
know,
Yeah. There's an Isa Gemini song called "Wrath of Medusa"
mhm,
that inspired by Algol, which is the Medusa star.
yeah,
Great, you probably know, great tragedies are associated with that, and people who have that in significant places in their chart oftentimes will have neck issues. A lot of times they will even like lose their head or get their head cut off. Like it's really crazy stuff goes on with that star. Um, and I really do love the whole, sort of psychology that goes with it, the psycho-spiritual aspects with it. I feel like I learned a lot from that because I feel like in our society today, there's a lot of women that feel like they have been trapped in time,
mhm,
and they end up taking on this sort of Gorgon head. And I very much
mhm,
first Black Man Horseman album and a lot of the Ides of Gemini, I definitely was identifying as that Gorgon head. I was venomous, so very angry.
mhm,
Um, and then I did realize over time that all of my anger came from seeing society and seeing our individual roles as polarized and seeing them from the mind's perspective. And the mind's perspective is the great divider. It divides
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
And heart's perspective is the great uniter of everything.
yeah.
Passion.
I'm gonna interrupt you because we're running out of time. So I'm gonna end it and call you back and we can keep going before we get too into it. Okay, I'll call you back in 1 second for part 2. Okay.